What's up, party animals? My name is Kezi, and this one's not going to be a great happy video. So it's my birthday, which is fun. I'm getting older, which sometimes unexpected. But the big this is an anniversary of a lot of things. So my birthday has a lot of things that are happened. One, my day of birth. Secondly, was when I got Kezi. It showed up at my doorstep on my birthday, and that was really awesome. So Kezi's birthday is the same as my own. And now, this one was a little more fudged, but I definitely did it so that everything could kind of be celebrated at once. My birthday marks 2 years being clean off of benzodiazepines. In 2021 to 2022, I found myself hopelessly addicted to benzos. And this has been something I've never hidden it. It's not been like a secret or anything like that. But I've also never spoken about it publicly. You know, this has never been a topic that I've been... Oops, shit. This has never been a topic that I've been super open or eager to talk about, especially on this channel. You know, I worry about how perceptions might change. I worry what YouTube might think about it. You know, it's a touchy subject, but I want to help people. That's always been what I want to do. You know, I want people to find their passion and pursue it. And I really don't want that passion to be drugs. That's a dangerous path and one that has done a lot of damage for me and the people around me. So I'm going to tell that story. As you saw in the beginning, viewer discretion is advised. This is a rough topic. So if you're okay with all of that you saw, go ahead and continue. So all this kind of starts in 2020. All this starts a little earlier, but mostly in 2020 when I was living with a couple of furries, and one of them was horribly manipulative. This person was pretty bad to live with, and due to the pandemic lockdowns, being trapped in a house with someone so aggressive was not a good time for me. Now, in a weird twist of fate, this person was also prescribed something called clonazepam. This is a sleeping medication, and it is the class of drug called benzodiazepine. And this is more or less where the story begins. Many, many years ago, my mom was actually prescribed them as well. And again, you know, it kind of seemed like something everybody had. And I was like, oh, okay, it's fine. You know, it's commonly prescribed. How bad could it be? And so seeing everyone around me who had it, and then my roommate also who gave it to me about 2 times to help me with sleep. But, you know, this person was also kind of crazy. And I have some traumatic memories of living with this person. So I was kind of already in rough shape, but I started my YouTube channel, and that was awesome. But being alone and isolated, I was just happy to have anybody who liked my content and would talk to anybody about whatever. And so that was always nice to have kind of a small but present group of people around me who liked what I made. And we would swap ideas back and forth of how to make YouTube videos and stuff like that. You know, all from the comfort of my bedroom. And then they left. You know, this crazy person and their poor partner ended up going to move somewhere else, and that's a whole different problem for a whole different time, if I'll ever even talk about it, because this is definitely in the past now and not something that I don't do smears. You know, I'm not telling this person by name. I don't want to cause problems. They did what they did. I hope they feel bad, but if they don't, well, they're not my life anymore, so I don't really care. Now, I had freedom again. You know, sure, it was the COVID lockdowns, but people still wanted to meet, and I wasn't in any public-facing role. My job was heavily, protected. We had to wear like full face shields and stuff like that. We worked in a clean room, so there wasn't really any risk of spreading. I'm not immunocompromised, and neither was anybody else. I got vaccines as needed, but would have people over to visit, and I would meet people because I could finally do that again. And I met someone amazing. I met someone that I wasn't sure about at first, but they wanted to date, and I agreed. And, a few months go by, and while maybe I was a little rushed in asking, but I asked them to marry me. And there was some kind of emotional weight to that, and I kind of panicked and made some poor choices in the heat of the moment. But after the dust settled, they told me, well, until you screwed up, that he was going to say yes. And I was going to have someone for the rest of my life, as much as, you can. But he told me he was going to say yes. But that opportunity was long gone due to me making terrible decisions. And that screwed me up. That screwed me up really, really bad. After the rough experience with the crazy roommate, I wasn't really super in good shape myself. And so, of course, I made the poor choices, but then I again immediately made another set of poor choices. And so that screwed up probably the best relationship I ever could have had. And that left a long, that just ruined my life, pretty much. But that led to me kind of just going and being whatever, and just being like, okay, fine, I'll go hook up with someone else, blah, blah, blah. And the next person I met was someone who was addicted to benzos. I didn't know they were addicted at the time. I just knew that they had them and was like, oh, okay, you have a script of benzos. Who doesn't anymore? Ha, ha, ha. They seemed fine and perfectly capable. And so I would get them on occasion. And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is amazing for sleep. I have insomnia. And so being able to take those just to have the best sleep of my life, well, heck, if everyone has them, I should be able to get some too. That should be no problem. And life goes on. I didn't see any problem with it. I was just happy to have the really good sleep. And then again, nothing happened. However, we did go on a road trip together. And they gave me one of their pills. We went out to go play in the ocean, and I don't remember getting back in the car. I just have memories of going out, and then the next day. That's it. Just a giant hole. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh man, what a weird time that was. Ha ha ha. No, but I didn't think about it, right? But looking back, that was the first time I blacked out. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if this person had taken advantage of me or what had happened at all. I am sterile, so like nothing really could have happened, and I've gotten STD tests as well since then and before then. So I've always been, upkept, so nothing terrible could have happened. But, again, I don't know what happened. I just remember waking up. Who knows? But again, life goes on. I end up leaving the city. I get this new job at Intel. And, for what it's worth, I'm still fucked up about my relationship with my ex. I would think about it constantly. I remember this one time when I was going to like a beach trip with my parents. We rented like this Airbnb or whatever and just wanted to have a nice time together. And I remember scream crying because I lost someone so special to me and I didn't know how to cope with that. And, and that was relatively sober. I might have had like a drink, but, again, no benzos. I was just really, really hurt by what had happened. So hurt that I just couldn't handle stuff. Just in life, I just wasn't able to cope. And continuing, I got a job at Intel and I move up to the big city. And this is amazing. Great life changes. I have my dream car. I have a dream job. I live in an apartment that is so, it's brand new. So it's got plush carpets, good furniture. Everything in my life seems to be going really well. Except I'm still miserable. I'm alone and I live alone at the time too. And I didn't see myself being with anybody because all I wanted was my ex back. He was amazing, and I missed him. And so, despite having everything I could ever wish for, I was still missing that one thing, and I did anything to try to fill that void. And anything I did do, I still struggled with insomnia, and I was working a really late shift. So, I'd be working from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and needing to sleep during the day. So I found a supply of sleeping pills. I didn't go through a doctor. I just got them off of whoever would sell them to me. And this is when things started going really bad. This was about 2021, 2022 era. And at first, things weren't so bad. I would tell people, hey, yeah, I'm taking it from sleep. And they're like, oh, okay, that's probably fine. A lot of people take it for sleep. And I never really specified if it was prescribed or not. I just would mention that's what I had on hand. And for a while, it was okay. Nothing was bad. I mean, the idea as a whole was obviously, looking backwards, a horrible idea. But again, I would take them to sleep. I wouldn't take them to party or anything like that. And so I kept my job for a while. Things were going well. And then later on, I start going to these big events. I was going to music festivals. I was going to furry cons. And I kept seeing this one person over and over and over again. And this person lived local. And so we started hanging out. And even more so, they started working at Intel. By chance, the exact same shift I was working on as well. So we spent a lot of time together. My schedule at Intel was very flexible, and so I could kind of pick my breaks whenever I liked to. So I'd always try to time my breaks to hang out with this new person. And that was great. It was awesome. And then I later found out that, they were into drugs too. Different drugs, but still drugs. And I found out that they were into drugs too. Different drugs, but still drugs. And again, I was holding myself kind of together. I was still gutted by my ex at the time, and things weren't, I wasn't happy to my very core. And the benzos were still in my life, but again, it was only really for sleeping. But slowly things started to drift. And the first sign was when I would start taking these sleeping pills outside of times I was supposed to be sleeping. I started taking them at work. And that's immediately when you have a problem. You can go from, having a beer after work to having a beer before work, and that's when things are not good, and you need to start thinking about getting help. But one of the things that benzos do is they make you not care. If you take a small enough dose not to knock you out, but to just feel it, well, you don't actually feel it, you just feel nothing. You're done. Your brain's clear. And you kind of bypass the whole thinking before you act whole thing. So I wasn't overthinking anymore. I was finally able to not be freaking out about my ex every second of every day. I was just okay. And sure, again, it's not like I was great. I didn't feel anything, but it didn't hurt. And that was nice. And so I continued to do that. I would take them, since they were long 12-hour shifts, I would take them about twice a shift, a very small amount at first, but I would still be taking them at work. And again, this went fine. There was no problems originally. Again, lots of people take these things for things like anxiety. And so, as someone who was anxious and an insomniac, it felt like it made sense to take this wonder drug for my anxiety, for my insomnia, for anything that I felt like I needed help with. And so it continued. Quietly, but it continued. And I continue to talk with this guy, and he's living in a kind of dumpy place that he doesn't want to live in anymore. And I'm kind of looking for a roommate because I feel really lonely living at home. And I kind of had him just come over and hang out every single day anyway. And so he agrees that, hey, let's live together. I want the extra money to continue to buy drugs, and so does he. So we can pool our money together and buy more drugs. Yay, that's super cool. It wasn't, but it's what we ended up doing and what we did. This was the beginning of the end. It's hard to pinpoint any moment exactly because at this point, I'm deep into the addiction. I tell a few people, hey, if I need rehab, will you help with that? And they're like, of course. Do you need help now? No, I don't think so. And, of course, that was the moment where I really did. I definitely needed to be taken out of my life and put into a home or something like that. But, I was high and I was just like, I'm chill. Who cares? And that's where things are really bad. When this person starts living with me and we start doing drugs together. We would buy massive, massive amounts of things that I should not have. And we would take them all within a very short amount of time. It was all personal use, but no one would believe that it's for personal use. It was a lot. At one point, I was up to 70 pills per day of benzos. These are like 5 milligrams each. That is a very, very high dose. And I'd be taking 70 because you can't overdose on benzos. If you mix it with anything, God help you, you are dead immediately. If I took all those pills but then had one shot of alcohol, on the floor, dead. So I wasn't drinking at the time, luckily, and I wasn't mixing them with anything. I would usually just take the benzos, and that was my choice. And things were not okay, but they weren't getting worse. And they were about to. There are months of my life now in about 2022 to, I think, again, all this happens 2021 to 2022. But there are holes in my memory, months long, where I don't have memories. I wasn't there. There are pictures of me at events. There are pictures of me fursuiting at events that I just do not remember. I have absolutely no memory of going there, of being there, of who I met or what I was doing. Just pictures that I had amnesia, I guess. And that was due to the benzos. So with these massive periods of my life, I just don't remember. And eventually, that's when things started going out of hand. I would, again, I have these massive holes in my memory, so I never remember exactly what caused it. But this is when things get violent. There would be times where I would wake up from some kind of bender and I would just kind of come to, and the walls of my house would be covered in blood. And I would be covered in cuts all over my body. It looks like I got into a sword fight. And I would wake up in my house alone. No one was there, just me, covered in blood. No other people, no other bodies, thankfully. And I wouldn't know what had happened. And I would get told by my roommate, and at the time, we started dating as well. And I would get told by my then boyfriend, yeah, you pulled a knife on me, demanding that I give you something, your car keys or drugs or more benzos or whatever he had that I didn't. I would be absolutely blasted on drugs and I would pull a knife on him. And I don't remember this at all. I just remember waking up covered in blood. And it was my own, thankfully. To as thankful as you can be by that. I never directly cut him. He was pretty good at not getting stabbed. But then, I would get all pissed off and start cutting myself. And this happened a lot more than probably either of us would like to remember. And there are other people who are involved. I would have these crash outs with guests over. And there are people who saw me at this terrifying low and of someone who was violent, who was scary, who was aggressive, and who didn't know, who wasn't there. You would look into my eyes and I was dead. It was depressing. And so while I'm left with these scars that will not go away, these are literally deep cuts that are just permanently on my arms and rest of my body. These scars will not go away. But I got the easy way out. These people in my life will have trauma that will sit with them for the rest of their life because of the actions that I took. And again, I don't remember any of it. I don't have to, because it was the drugs. It just bypassed my brain. I was a monster. And so anybody who was in my life at the time was pretty much getting the worst side of me. And a lot of people just kind of let me write it out. They were like, okay, well, I guess this guy isn't worth having in their life. But other people, they were like, oh my God, that's so cool. I love drugs. I'm going to do them too. Because, I still was making YouTube videos at the time, and I would talk to people about making YouTube videos or just whatever was happening in my life. And so I would tell people that like, oh yeah, I'm on high or whatever the hell. This stuff sucks. Don't do it. But, man, this high feels great. So it was like, I would try my best to tell people to stay away from this stuff because in the back of my mind, I begged for rehab at one point, but only as much as I could. Again, this substance makes you not care. And I sure didn't. And so most of the time I was just spent getting high and getting... That was it. That was all my life was doing. Again, somehow I managed to make YouTube videos every so often. But yeah, that was... it was luck that any of those ever made it out. Because, again, not stoned, but like just blackout 24/7 for months on end. And every once in a while, again, I would come to. And at one point, the first bad major thing happens. And this isn't even the knife thing. This is after I start, swinging knives around and being literally dangerous. I got fired from Intel. Allegedly, now again, I have no memory of this, but allegedly I had punched a window. And they were like, oh my God, you were completely fucked up. For some reason, they weren't able to drug test me, but they were able to kind of just deduce that I am not well in the head and I should not be at work. So they scheduled me to get picked up and told me, all right, you got to take a week of paid time off. You're just out for a while. There's something wrong. You need to go. And after that, they were like, actually, you're not coming back after a week. We're going to continue this paid time off, which is crazy that they were paying me. We're going to continue this, and we're going to send you through the process. We're going to have you talk to HR. They had me talk to psychologists. They had me talk to a lot of people, only over the phone, but they were trying to figure out what the hell was going on, because apparently they couldn't drug test me. I don't know why, but they had to figure out what was going on. And eventually I had admitted that I was doing drugs. And immediately, once those words left my mouth, they pretty much just hung up and sent me my letter of termination. All income stopped, and I was fired permanently. There was no coming back. And that was devastating. Absolutely devastating. And at the time, my car was in the shop because I screwed up the tire or something like that. And so I didn't even have a car. I was just, and oh man, this car situation was horrible. This company was taking literal months to try to fix my car. And so I was kind of in a bad situation mentally that was made worse by the lack of car, the addiction, still not over my ex, even though I was dating someone actively. So the whole situation was just all kinds of bad. And this likely led to another crash out where I would swing a knife around and freak out about whatever. But yeah, I was still hopelessly addicted to benzos, and I was without a car and now without a job. And I didn't know what to do. And I spent time bouncing around. I got another job for a while, met someone really special who will come up later in this story. But the job itself, it wasn't great, but I managed, I suppose. But I ended up losing that too. This one wasn't because of the drugs. I was trying my best to stay sober, but yeah, whatever. But I did kind of talk back to a manager after making my trans friend cry. And this was pretty bad, and I yelled at a manager being like, no, you don't get to make people cry because you want to save some money. This person's working an unsafe job, and you are forcing them to do it alone. They need a partner for it, and blah, 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 blah. Management did not like that, and so I was terminated from the role. Which is like, okay, fine, sounds like this company was a crappy company anyway if they're going to abuse people like that, so whatever. But I lost my job again. So 2 jobs in a row I lost, and that wasn't making me feel very good. I then, after a while, got another job. And this one was a lot better. It was a cooler company. It was working in semiconductors again. It was kind of fascinating. But it had a lot of rules. No music on the floor. No phones on the floor. You couldn't talk to people. And they forced me to then work alone in a dangerous environment. I was working around chemical vats. And depression was really bad. Now, I was trying my best to stay off of the benzos. I was actually clean for a while. This was doing well. And it was really hard to stay clean, but I was doing it for most of the time I was at the job. But because of my boyfriend at the time, he was going out and partying while I had to just sit at home and work because, that my schedule was unfortunate and I would work on Friday and Saturday nights. And this was hard for the party Coyote. I can't go and see these cool artists that I'd love to see with my boyfriend. That sucked. And that led to fighting constantly over petty things or that thing specifically. It felt unfair to tell him, well, no, you can't go party if I can't go party. But at the same time, it's not like I wanted him to go party without me. That really sucks. And I was jealous of him going out and having fun while I had no social life. And I won't blame him. I was crazy, so I definitely did enough to hurt him. It's not a competition, but it seemed like things weren't working out very well. But so, my own boyfriend going out to party, my job being super restrictive and feeling lonely, working alone in front of chemical vats where if I dip a finger in, I take out a bone. Like, this was dangerous stuff, and it was just open in front of me, and I had to sit there all day alone, no one to talk to, no music to listen to, and no friends when I got back. I relapsed. I found a way to get more benzos, and after probably about 2 or 3 months of being clean, I relapsed. And this was the relapse to ruin it all. This was the big one. Because the day before, me and my boyfriend had gone to the beach. Had a great time. It was a really, really fun experience he and I had. I get home, sure, we got a little high, but it was good-natured. I definitely don't think that but it was good-natured and positive stuff. We were being safe. And I got home and I had the bottle of benzos on my desk. I was like, oh man, I could really use some... Whoops. Man, I'm hitting 30 minutes. Okay, I gotta redo this. Whoops. and I relapsed. And I thought it was going to be okay. You know, I didn't really anticipate anything going wrong. I took the benzos to sleep because it was late and I wanted to, after such a great day, I'd love to have a great night's sleep. This was the worst night of my life because I don't remember anything. There are spotty memories. Of course, I remember the day because I was sober. But the night, I was just going to bed. And I remember a moment of seeing two headlights in front of me and driving towards it. And then nothing. And then I remember sitting in a yellow room. That was jail. I went to jail that night. And I barely remember any of it. The car that I hit was just parked. No one was hurt. I certainly wasn't hurt. The airbags never went off. But my car was totaled and, of course, impounded. I went to jail and was charged with a DUI and reckless driving. But I didn't know that. I was still really high. I don't know how much I took that night, but I spent about 24 hours where I have total amnesia. When I got home, I was screaming constantly. Where's my car? Where's my car? Oh my God, where's my fucking car? I don't know where it is. Why isn't my car here? What happened? Oh my God. And I'd be swinging a knife around demanding that I get whatever back or whatever the hell. But it doesn't matter. It was gone. And again, I don't remember anything. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember being in jail. I don't remember any of it. I just remember the nice day that I had before I took the drug. This is not great. My parents wouldn't let me borrow the car again. And so I was just out a vehicle. And my insurance wouldn't cover it, so I was just out the vehicle forever now. This was it. I had to rely on public transit, and this was like a 2-hour public transit ride on top of a 12-hour shift. It was rough, and eventually I missed enough work because I was either sleeping on the job because I just didn't get much sleep, basically 16 straight hours of working or being on the road trying to get to work, compounded with, I barely get 8 hours of sleep a night, need to get home, get changed, shower, do that thing. I'd work 4 days a week. And then again, I'd still be missing events. So I would just be missing work, falling asleep on the job. Eventually I was fired from that too. And that was unrecoverable. I wasn't able to pay rent that month. It's not like I got paid a lot. Thankfully, my car payment was covered by the insurance, and so I was out. That debt wasn't needing to be paid anymore. I got very lucky. And things go on. And I talked to the friend who I met at my prior job, who I told you that was going to be relevant later in the story. She lived on a farm, effectively, and had space in a shed for me and my boyfriend at the time to sleep in. And so we took it. It was very cheap. I think we each paid like $300 a month to live there. And that's what I consider my first rehab. This is when I was like, okay, I need to get sober. We move in sometime around July, and because of how messy the addiction was, I would find pills just lying in the carpet, and so I saved one. This was a small one, a very, very light one. I think it was like a quarter. And, it was like, I took a risk doing this, but it was my birthday, and that's when I took the last one. I was like, this is it. This is going to be when it ends. And I took it while alone in the shed, and then it was so low I didn't get amnesia. I still remember the experience. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's over now. This needs to be behind me. And I worked with them, my new roommates and my boyfriend and everyone in my life I talked to and said, I need help. I need to get off of these drugs. And I did. It was long. It was hard. It was horrible. It was torture. Usually you're supposed to wean yourself off of these drugs, but, because of the timeline of all of it, I think I was safe. But there was a chance where, because I didn't wean myself off, I could have just died. This stuff is horribly dangerous to get off of. And it's probably done lasting damage to my brain that I don't even know. But I got off. I would spend every single night having nightmares of just finding pills somewhere or buying them or whatever. There would always be these dreams of taking more benzos. And then I'd wake up and be like, oh, I didn't take any. Well, that's good. But I still missed it. I really, really was craving, and it was really, really hard. And I turned to alcohol, too, for a while. Since my roommates had alcohol around, I would occasionally steal it. And I would try my best to pay him back, but I would still steal the alcohol. And that wasn't fair to them. And this was more or less sober. This was just I can't remember what the word is for recovering, but this was during the recovery. And stealing their alcohol was really, really bad of me. And I've apologized and done what I could to help, kind of cover that. But they were still willing to help. They knew I was hurting. They knew how much this sucked. They knew how much addiction could ruin my life. And they didn't want to just give up on me because, I wouldn't last very long on the streets. And I got clean. Eventually the dreams stopped. Eventually the craving stopped. Eventually I could think normally again. I was still kind of in this haze, for months after where memory is still really spotty. I tried to focus on getting my passions back. This is when I laid a lot of music on the synths and stuff like that, trying to focus on, okay, well, I have no job and I have no other responsibilities. I might as well just make videos or music or whatever I did. And I did to my best of ability because I needed to get back me. I needed to get back the things that I cared about that were important to me originally. And over time, it took, most of a year, but I got clean. I was totally sober from benzos. And I was about to be sober from alcohol as well. Because I tried to get a job. There was this little weed shop next door, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'll apply there. And I talked to them, and they said, no, we're sorry, you can't work here. There's a warrant for your arrest. I had a warrant. I didn't know why. I thought everything was okay. All the documents I was given once I left jail, I gave them to my boyfriend, and he looked them over and didn't see any court summons or anything. But it turns out that, yes, there was a warrant for my arrest. They weren't looking for me. It's a bench warrant. So if they happened to find me, they'd go pick me up. And this was terrifying. There was a point where I was trying to go to further confusion, and it's almost luck that I didn't get on that airplane because I would have gotten arrested and no one would have known why or what happened. So I realized, well, shit, I need to go deal with that. That's horrible. That's a bad thing. And so I decided it's time to move. I need to go live somewhere to where I can deal with this because this was done not in farmland and I would have to go to court and deal with that. And so we kind of made these plans, started working with people to go live where we are now as it's close to where my court was. And I go talk to the court and I figure out what's going on. And I think that this is the day that they're just going to pick me up and take me to jail. I didn't know what was going to happen as soon as I walked in there. But I walked up and I turned myself in. And they set me up with an attorney. And they set me up with an attorney, and I was then now in the system. I had to basically go to court dates like twice a week or twice a month. This was last year, actually, and it ruined my summer. It was a really, really rough time. And eventually, finally, after like 3 months of dealing with nonstop garbage. I was staying sober, wasn't drinking, wasn't smoking. I didn't realize I had anything going on, but the rules stipulated, hey, you have to stay completely sober. And so I did. And I continue with that, go through all the court dates, and finally, after everything, I reach the verdict. And I say sober, and they show me a video. They show me the body cam of the police officer who arrested me, and it was embarrassing. It was really hard to watch because you could tell I wasn't there. You could tell I was just gone, didn't care. I was just blatantly lying to the cops, which, I mean, you never want to talk to the cops very well, but, it wasn't like good lying. It was like, I am making shit up on the spot and don't know who you are or what's going on. It was hard to watch. And, again, like I said, no one was hurt in the incident, just property damage, which isn't great, but better than a human life or the life of an animal. But I go through all this and eventually they reach a verdict. They told me I'm going to jail. And that there is nothing I can do. Usually for your first DUI, you get to go on something called diversion. But I wasn't able to get that because I missed my court date. And if you miss your court date, you do not get diversion at all. Period. End of story. So I went to jail for about a week. And this was when I was sober. And all of a sudden, these weird memories come back to me of like, oh my God, this is where I was. This is where I was put that one night so long. Because it was about a year that had gone by since that incident at that night. Over a year, I think, by that point. And, they didn't put me in jail forever. It could have been 2 years. It could have been 4 years, I think, because there were 2 counts of things. But they reduced the sentencing and ran it concurrent. And they had me go through the stipulation of you need to go to rehab. And here are a list of rehab clinics you'll go to, or you can go to, pick one, and set it up and start going. And jail was weird. I do not recommend it, but it's almost kind of funny. Everyone there was surprisingly nice. All my jailmates were not crazy. I mean, they weren't good people, but it's people who were down on their luck, made bad choices, and it led them to bad places. But it felt like, because we were like, I think there was like 6 of us in a large cell. It felt like the worst slumber party ever. It was so bad. The toilet was right there. And I was taught how to take a jail poop. That wasn't fun. You basically just hold down the flush button while farting your brains out. Horribly embarrassing. Oh my God, I need a fucking... Ugh. Okay. The sweat's really bad. This is really hard to do. And jail was the worst sleepover I've ever been to. Like, it was admittedly kind of a neat experience. Not one that I would suggest for anybody for any length of time, but a neat experience nonetheless. And this was, honestly, this was like kind of the second half of rehab. Because then I needed to go from this kind of, run, like, not renegade, but like kind of community effort rehab where it was just some friends and I wasn't restricted that hard. No one drug tested me. They just made sure I wasn't doing benzos anymore and said, screw it to whatever else as long as I wasn't being, violent or anything like that. And this was the real deal. And I had just barely enough to pay rent here. And I was looking for work and stuff like that. And ironically, my jail date, and so the date that everything happened was on 6/21. I have official documents that have 6/21 written on them because that's when everything started. And after I got out of jail, I was put on a 2-year probation. And the rehab was honestly super helpful. It taught me a few things that I didn't learn by going just to a friend's farm and getting help there. One, they did weekly or twice weekly drug tests, and this included alcohol. So I was staying very sober. And this went on for about 3 or 4 months or so. It took a while to get it set up, and it took a while for it to happen and stuff like that. So it was kind of a janky experience, but it gave me resources. And one of them I really admired was something called SMART. SMART. It stands for something, but it's a free nonprofit organization that allows people to kind of reference this handbook and basically it's group therapy where everyone comes together, talks about their addiction or day or wins or loses, and just tries to get through and has a support community. It can really help with a lot of people. And I found one that was LGBT friendly. And so that was super helpful. And I talked to people about, big one was I still wasn't over my ex, even after everything. And I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time by that point, because things weren't just working out. Once the drugs dried up, it realized so was our love. And we weren't kind to each other anymore. And the goodness in each other was kind of lost. I still live with him, but we are no longer together. But, I still wasn't over that original ex. He said he was going to marry me, and that still screws with me, actually, actively, but I've gotten better. And, again, time goes on. This was only last year that all this went down. And I got really lucky. I found a job. I was working at a company called Lamb, and this was awesome. But eventually, I got fired from that too, and now I'm sitting here with effectively no job. And, the rehab goes well. I pass it. And I've continued to stay sober off of benzos. I have cracked and taken drinks before, and it's not great. Because they're not drug testing me every single week, it's more difficult to stay accountable. But I try my best. I try to avoid drinking at events. I crashed out at a house party once, had a really bad time. I made a video about it, but since there's alcohol just readily available there, I caused a scene. And since then, I've come to an agreement with the host that I am not allowed to drink there. And so I've been, overall, fairly sober, for what it's worth. And yeah, now we're here. And there are a lot of people that I hurt in the past. There are people who saw the worst side of me. And, from my ex who lived with me for a while and saw me try to stab him, cut myself, scream at him. He's since helped me through the rehab and to get sober, and has forgiven me. The people who I hurt directly have watched me go through this, seen how much it sucked, but watched and helped me get sober and have forgiven me. I don't know if I've forgiven myself, but I at least hope you can, because this has been a very hard journey. And this has been a video I've been meaning to make for a while, but to mark the 2-year anniversary of getting clean, I figured, well, might as well do it now. And apologize to the people in my life that I hurt. You know, I wasn't there, really. But one of the things that I was taught young is, you know, I chose to take it. I made the choice to take those benzos. You know, sure, it wasn't very well educated, but I still chose to go down that path. And that's my fault. And I'm sorry. Well, that's kind of it. You know, I'm doing my best to get better. I'm trying to continue to make videos, have that passion back. Life just kind of doesn't feel the same anymore. I've been very depressed, but I haven't relapsed, and that's very good. And I don't really think about it much either. I don't ever, even on my darkest days, I'm not like, oh, I should just go take pills and you know, put an end to it all. I have thought about the second thing, but I haven't ever thought about relapsing on pills to any serious consideration. And I'm grateful for that, because I don't want to make my life worse. And I don't want you to either. Please, please, stay off of benzos. Stay off of painkillers. Doctors will prescribe them left and right. I don't care. Stay off of them. They're dangerous. They're not well documented. And Big Pharma actually pushes them a lot harder than you would think. You hear a lot about the opioid epidemic. There is a benzo epidemic that is just quietly seething right underneath. So I hope this video helped someone. I hope this video made sense. I hope my story can be something that can help someone else later down the line avoid drugs and avoid causing, you know, ruining their life with everything going good. Like I said, I had everything I ever wanted. A really cool YouTube channel, a dream job, a dream car. I even had a dream boyfriend for a while. Everything was great. And I lost all of it, except barely my YouTube channel. And, well, just the passion for that's gone now. So I hope you can stay off of the drugs. And I guess until next time, thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.